Okay, just seeing if anyone's going to join us in party, and then we can pop on in there.
Not that I'm aware of, though.
Huh?
See if I know if anyone's coming in.
I don't think so. Oh, hey, now we're friends. We're real friends.
Heck yeah.
We're verified friendos. Okay. Sell off these pants, and if no one wants to hop into the group by the time I am done selling this to a vendor, we'll just pop in ourselves.
That sounds good.
You know, some of our usual people who join up for the classes are like runs out of con right now that she's having to staff, and then Tracy's having to go into my fractal static in 10 minutes. So
Oh, gotcha.
yeah. Those are the two, and then sometimes we get like Eve who joins, but she usually can't log on until later in the day anyway. So I'll update Blish.
So probably more just be like a recorded session for them.
Yeah, probably. Hopefully some people will pop over in Twitch chat or something. But otherwise, yeah, probably be primarily a recorded session. And I bet we'll have people who have interest in even doing more specific sessions, like something like just on Scrapper or just on Hollow. So we could always do some of those later, too.
Yeah, that works.
Well, I imagine we'll probably have some people pop into at least Twitch chat at some point while we're running. What's going on there? Get out of here. Okay. Well, I guess I'll do a little intro here. This is going to be engineer class. Just a basic engineer class. We're going to go over, Cinn is here as our subject matter expert, or as they say at work, an SME. And they're going to go over a number of things for us. Cinn, do you prefer they, them, or what are your pronouns? I should be able to actually see. Oh, he, him. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so he'll show us some info on each of the specs and kind of the class as a whole, and then probably do a more specialized session at some point in the future. So feel free to go ahead and take it away, Cinn. What I can do is if you decide to stream, because I know you've got a PowerPoint, you can just stream to the Discord channel, and then I'll pop that into my stream.
Oh yeah, okay, let me just pull that up real quick. I wasn't sure if you were just going to stream that off or if I was going to do that.
Oh, either works, whatever you want to do there. But if you also want to end up like showing things on your screen, like if you're messing around on your character, then sometimes if you're already streaming, it can help. So whatever you would like to do. Otherwise, I can advance slides as you desire.
No, that's all good. Let me just share the screen.
Okay. And then I'll get my screen share set up after that.
Okay, that should work.
Stream. Oh, that's so cool how you combined like a bunch of them on that one. I love that. Okay, let me pop this out. There's the pop out button. And
No, don't know what that line is.
oh yeah. Start that. Get that away. Okay. And then I just gotta see if... Haha, it did work. Okay. My previous save of that worked. Let me hide my chat box blocker. There we go. There. Okay. Oh, hey, Linka. Linka just joined us in chat. I saw that you were
Oh,
streaming early today,
okay.
Linka, too, but it's been difficult because, like, since you're on EU time and you stream, like, during my workday, I'm not always able to pop in and say hi 'cause I'm doing a million things. Yeah, okay, Cinn, go ahead. I will leave it to you. And I'll interject here and there probably with, like, questions or just comments.
All right, sounds good. All right, so just want to say, thank you everybody for taking the time out of your day to check out this recording, or for all of you that are here live, thank you very much. I also want to say I apologize for having to delay this a couple of weeks. It's had a couple of life things going on, but we're good now. So I'd like to kind of go through just a little bit about Engineer. So I kind of stole the format from Scar a little bit ago, so a little bit about myself. I have been playing this game pretty much since Living Worlds Season 1, when the Nightmare Tower was the current content. I'm also an an avid enjoyer of Final Fantasy XIV, and I kind of bounce between the two games depending on it's kind of where my interests are lying at the time. I do mostly instance PvE content in Guild Wars 2, focusing mostly on fractals and strikes, and I've been playing mostly Engineer since day one. Had a little bit of dabbling with Guardian and Mesmer, but mostly Engineer. And I do have some experience with optimization and speedruns, both in this game and in Final Fantasy XIV. So just to start, why would you want to pick Engineer? So essentially, this class is kind of a jack of all trades, but we're a master of all. Essentially, Engineer has the capability to do essentially every role when it comes to instance PvE, including a couple of the more nuanced and niche roles for some of the raid fights as well. It's pretty much been pretty much capable of doing all the content since the game's been out, and continues to be pretty strong, both in the open world, instance PvE, and also in some of the competitive game modes like PvP and World versus World. It also has a lot of answers to pretty much any situation, just kind of depending on what you need, if you could switch out your utilities. And a unique aspect to Engineer is the kits. It's a little bit of it's a bit like a split between the Engineer community. You love kits or you hate kits. It's completely and entirely unique to Engineer.
I have
If
very mixed
people,
feelings about kits.
I love kits, so I'm on that side of the fence. If anyone has been familiar with how Guardian's Firebrand kind of had that rework with their tomes, it's a little similar to that in a sense. We kind of think of them as like weapon swaps without a cooldown in a way.
Yeah,
And just
I would agree. They're kind of, it's like having another weapon, which is kind of like, that's why NG is not allowed to weapon swap for the most part, is because
yeah,
of their
exactly.
access to kits. They basically have all of these. I mean, how many kits are there? Is there a total of 5 or 6?
I believe there's 6 of them because there's a heal, there's 4 utility, and mortar for the elite.
Yeah, so you've got a lot. And yeah, with the, I mean, granted, the skills themselves have cooldown, but swapping into the kit has no cooldown, which is really nice.
Actually, I'm sorry, there are 7 kits. I totally
There's
forgot about
7
the
of
tool
them.
kit.
Oh my
I
gosh,
totally
yeah, I
forgot
forgot
about
about
tool
that too.
kit.
Yeah, that one has a
And then,
nice, that throw wrench CC. Damn.
oh yeah, plus the free block on basically any build, super nice.
Oh yeah.
But and of course, we can't forget about aesthetics. Engineers got explosions. We have lasers. We have the turrets, and of course, we have robots. Super fun and super cool. So just kind of some of the unique Perks. So as was already mentioned, engineers do not weapon swap in combat. Instead, we circumvent that by using kits.
Oh yeah, in combat, I should specify. Used to be you couldn't at all, right?
Yeah, so before you could just only have the one weapon, but now they kind of made that universal change where everybody can now have a out of combat weapon swap. And there's some cool little tricks you can do with that, which I can kind of get into a little bit later for like a
Ooh,
tips and tricks section.
yeah.
But there's some fun ways to basically give you a third sigil in open world in some raid situations, which is pretty fun. So how pretty much how every class in this game kind of has like a unique profession mechanic for their F1 through F5. Something that's fun with Engineer is all of your utility skills are basically a 2-for-1 combo, where you have the utility itself, and then you also have a tool belt skill on your F1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So basically, you pick one. You might pick a skill just for that. You might pick a skill for that utility itself. It just gives you a lot more ways to kind of be flexible with your builds. Something else that's unique to the Engineer is that some of their abilities might have the explosive traits, and we were the originators of the elixirs. Even though Harbinger tries to steal the highlight on that a little bit, we were the first. So I will like to say that. So, tool belt profession mechanic. So on the top, right above the weapon skills, are the tool belt profession mechanics. Those skills are going to be tied directly to your utility. So as you can see on my first utility, I have that grenade kit. So it's going to be correlated to that grenade barrage. The throw mine ability is going to be directly correlated to the minefield. And then the final one, that does shift between the elite specs, but I can get more into that later. But essentially, you might pick an elite, or you might pick a utility just for that tool belt skill, and then just kind of have the elite just for just a little bit extra.
The tool
It
belt
might
is
be vice
really
versa.
cool.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting parts of engineer. I love for the fact that you basically just get two abilities, which also kind of helps with you
Yeah,
don't we don't weapon swap, so we get double the
exactly.
utility essentially. So even though we only get one weapon, we actually do have quite a few buttons we get to click. Right, so it's going to kind of go into the unique type, going to go into kits a little bit more in detail. So our kits are basically what we use instead of the weapon swap, and it is a core part to many of our engineer builds. There are a handful of builds, primarily damage focused builds, that can run without kits, but primarily most builds on average will run at least one kit, which kind of compensates for not having the weapon swap. They do not have a cooldown when switching, so you could jump into a kit just to use one ability, and then you can just jump right back out to your regular weapon, and there's no issue whatsoever. And they do act as a weapon swap, so you can use them to use on weapon swap sigils. So you don't have to worry about getting locked out of any of that kind of synergy. And you can also reactivate the kit to switch back to your weapon, or you could just use your weapon swap button, which if you're already used to using that hotkey, to just drop out of it and go back to your regular weapon. So they are very flexible to use. And a lot of the times when you're using kits, you don't need to focus on using all 5 abilities. A lot of times you might just use one ability on the kit, and that's perfectly fine. We'll just jump into each one a little bit more in detail. We have the med kit. This will be every heal engineer's best friend. It has access to a lot of boons. This was actually recently uh, buffed in the last patch, actually, where they give a lot more vigor, a lot more swiftness, and a lot more regen, which actually opens the door to the short bow a little bit. One of the things that the short bow was
Yeah.
lacking was vigor uptime, and that got fixed. It has access to a blast finisher as well, good condi cleanse, and it just has pretty good amounts of outwards healing, which is really fun. And if, in case anyone's worried about any kind of synergy with like abilities that might be triggered on using a heal ability, the tool belt for the heal kit does count as a heal. So if you're using any like relics that trigger when you use a heal skill, you still have access to that.
Hey, Tracy, thanks for joining.
Hello, Tracy.
You
Did you want
guys
to?
started without me.
I'm
Well,
so
we technically
sorry.
were supposed to start an hour ago, but my doctor appointment ran late and all this stuff. Did you want to pop into party too? I wasn't sure if you were doing fractals today.
No, Jenny canceled. You didn't see?
No, I haven't gotten a chance to catch up on that channel. I've been running around. Well, I'll invite you so you can at least like say stuff in party chat if you want to.
I'm working on getting in.
All good. Okay, Cinn, I think you can keep going.
So next we've got the bomb kit. This kit is primarily used mostly for Condi focus builds. This has a lot of just area of effects that you can drop. You have a bunch of different fields. You've got fire fields, you've got smoke fields. You also, the tool belt skill for the bomb kit is the big ol' bomb, which is a
Yeah.
blast finisher. It also has a huge defiance break on top of it, which is super satisfying to just drop that bomb and just blow up an entire CC bar by yourself. Something that engineers are really good at is breaking break bars. It is super cool.
Very true. Especially, I'm sure you'll go over it when you get to mech, but
Oh yeah.
that crash down.
And also it has an AoE pulsing blind, something that's a little bit underrated, but like in fractals, when you're fighting a lot of ads and a lot of mobs, you can blind them,
Oh.
which takes a lot of pressure off of your supports, which makes things a little bit easier to get through.
I forget about applying blind like
Oh, yeah.
all of the time.
Yeah, blind, like back in the old days, before elite specs were in the game and there really wasn't a lot of healers, this was super nice in fractals because you just wouldn't take any pressure from any of the mobs. It was so nice.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, the elixir gun. So this is the healer, support, engineer's other best friend. This kit has access to a stun break for yourself. It's got a lot of regens, a lot of different Condi cleansings. You actually have two different abilities that have Condi cleanse. You also have a blast finisher, and some of the abilities are considered elixirs. So any of your alchemy traits that affect elixirs will also affect your elixir gun. So if you take HGH, which gives you might on elixir usage, then you have two more ways to apply might to your party, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
There is a pretty neat trick with the elixir gun that I can go into later if we do a quick little tips and tricks section, which shows you how to deal with the silly knockback on the acid bomb. It's one of the things that a lot of people didn't actually know you can cancel that, but we can get into that later. The flamethrower. So flamethrower mostly used on Condi builds, but it's also pretty strong a lot of the times in World versus World. You just see a lot of engineers running around just spraying the fire everywhere.
Yeah.
Super
Flamethrower
fun.
go burr.
Super satisfying just letting your flamethrower go burr, but it has a lot of burn application. The tool belt skill on this weapon basically gives you a buff that makes the next 3 hits apply burn. A fun thing that you can do with this is the duration of the buff is longer than the cooldown, so you can actually stack this outside of combat. It does have access to a blast finisher before alacrity. I believe it's a 6-second cooldown. It's a 6-second cooldown blast finisher, and it does have a light knockback. Just a little bit more utility for a more offensive base weapon. If you do need a knockback, you can also take the extra utility of having that blast. Grenade kit. This is every DPS engineer's best friend. It is on basically every single engineer DPS build since the history of engineer. Basically every ability except for the tool belt, you will throw 3 grenades, with the tool belt being 6. Each of these grenades are considered an explosive, so it has a lot of synergy with the explosives tree. And they do a lot of strike damage. You can spec into them to do a lot of bleeds. You can stack up vulnerability. They give you a nice ranged option. So maybe if you take a melee weapon, you can use the grenade kit to have a little bit of range if you need to get away from an enemy or if you need to tag something far away from you. A lot of different things you can use with grenades. Also a nice little trick with grenades. You can throw them as you're running away, and you can throw them behind you without turning around. So if, let's say you're in like the XJJ strike mission and the boss is pulling you towards the damage field, you can just run away from the boss and throw grenades behind you, and you don't have to worry about it whatsoever. It's super nice.
Ooh.
The tool belt skill, or the tool belt that I definitely did not forget about. This kit is a little bit more niche. It's mostly used in PvP, but it does have a nice block on it, and it does have an underutilized pull that is unblockable, which is pretty important for competitive game modes and a more one-on-one situation. And it does actually now have a immobilize as of 2 or 3 patches ago, I believe.
Also, the pull on it, magnet, which is Toolkit 5, it has a massive range.
But it's 1200
It's
range.
1200.
It's
The max
insane.
range you can have in the game. Like, it is bonkers. I used it for a while when I was doing, I want to say heal scrapper for QTP for my static, and so I just throw a magnet at the anomalies or whatever they are, and then CC them with just that. Basically, it was so nice.
That super fun kit. Definitely funny just to run around with a wrench. You can also use the tool belt skill to literally just throw a wrench. It actually does a pretty decent bit of damage.
Yeah,
It's
actually, that was
fun.
pretty decent, huh? Some
Yeah.
Vuln and Cripple. Oh, one thing also worth mentioning is that ANET, being very consistent with documenting CC on tooltips, has definitely not put a Defiance break marker on the magnet skill itself. So it won't look like it does CC, but if you actually read it, it says, pull your target to you. That is a pull, and it is hard CC.
Yeah. And then the last kit will be the mortar kit. So this kit, originally when the game was first released, you actually put a literal mortar on the ground that you would then pilot, kind of like a
That's
catapult.
annoying.
It was very difficult to use. It was very funny, but it was did not have a whole lot of use. Now it's just a regular kit. It has a very long 1200 range, and the 2 through 5 abilities are all different fields. So you're able to blast with them, you're able to shoot through these fields. You have another pulsing blind, just like the bomb kit. You have a water field that pulses healing, that's also an elixir. So you have even more synergy with any of the alchemy trait lines as well. And it does have a poison field for a little bit of added damage as well. The tool belt skill for this one, it has a unblockable blast finisher that has a 2-second delay, has some pretty impressive damage, but a good part of this kit is mostly just the high amount of range and just the different utility you can use with those fields.
Hi, Jen.
It's
Sorry to say hi
a
to
different
Jen in
weapon.
chat there.
You are completely fine. So engineers have the least amount of weapons that you can use in the game. Granted, this is again
Interesting.
circumvented by the fact that we cannot weapon swap. We have
Yeah.
one less available weapon than an Ellie, which I find very fun.
That is interesting. And I guess, yeah, because of all the kits, they're trying to balance it out.
Yeah. If you think about it, an Ellie has 4 different attunements. We could have, 5 different kits, and
Yeah.
then you can also have Hollow Forge, which kind of feels like a weapon swap, and Hollow Smith, and then
Mhm.
you're walking around with 6 weapons.
Yeah,
Be
there's
a
a
little
lot.
silly.
Hey, Saria.
But-
Saria has popped into chat as well.
Oh, welcome, welcome. So each of the weapons for the engineer does have a pretty distinct role. So whenever you're trying to figure out what sort of weapon that you're wanting to use for a build, each of these plays a pretty strong, just a pretty strong role for what you're trying to do with it. So the pistol for main hand is going to be primarily your pure damage Condi weapon. Your sword, if you have the Hollowsmith unlocked, will be your power one-handed weapon. Your mace is going to be more of a support one-handed weapon. On the offhand, you can have your pistol, and they did buff it recently to be both a power damage and also a
Whoa.
Condi damage weapon.
That's
And the
interesting.
offhand pistol actually very impressive for power. It's actually quite strong right now. The shield is good for utility, also pretty good for open world. It's got both of its abilities are really high CC. It has a blast on it. It's got a long block. It's a very, very strong weapon with a lot of utility.
Holy
And
shit. They did
uh,
buff pistol offhand.
oh yeah,
That does a lot of damage.
it's funny. It's so good right now. Granted, I did make this PowerPoint before that buff, so I'm gonna mention that a little bit more later on. But
It's wild
pistol's
to me
pretty
that
big.
blowtorch, which sounds like a Condi skill. I mean, technically it does more Condi than it does power, but still, it does a lot. Yeah, and then glue shot, like holy fuck, glue shot getting like 2.5k on like my current build. I don't even have a
Yep.
relic on or anything.
Yeah. Plus, with the cooldown on it, it also triggers fireworks, which is super fun. That has
Ooh,
helped.
yeah, that's great.
That helped Hollowsmith a lot. But to wrap up on this slide, if you need a ranged power weapon, the rifle would be your option. You would probably go towards. The hammer is a 2-handed power build. This has a lot of synergy, focus more with the scrapper. It does have a block. It has an AoE stun. It has a reflect. Hammer is very, very cool. I would definitely recommend people trying it out if you haven't tried it before. The short bow, our newest toy that was added to our arsenal, is primarily a support weapon, and it gives engineers a different option between the mace and shield they've been using for so long. It has access to barrier, it has access to Aegis, it has some Condi cleanse and some might. It's a very fun, very cool new weapon. They definitely worked on it since the beta. I definitely think it works a lot better now. I would like to see them do a little bit more for it because I'd like to see it shine a little bit more outside of World v World. But it definitely works in PvE. Definitely has a place everywhere. And then we can't forget underwater. Everyone forgets underwater. Harpoon gun underwater. It's our only option. It's actually kind of strong though, so definitely don't sleep on the harpoon gun. If we could use harpoon guns outside of water, I'd probably be using it on land. Just gonna throw that out there. Just
Lee
gonna
has joined us in voice. Hey, Lee. Also, Lancelot has joined us. He's curled up in my lap, so I'll try to get the cat cam running.
Oh,
Hey,
that's awesome.
it looks like Scar has joined us too.
Oh yeah, and Scar joined us.
Oh, welcome, Scar.
Yeah. A little late.
All good.
Yeah.
Oh wait, how am I
Get to, gotta jump through these real quick because I gave a small dissertation before. So the pistols, on your main hand, it has access to some bleed, some poison, and some confusion. It does have a small blind on it as well. It also bounces, so you can blind multiple targets. Very useful just if you kind of need an emergency blind. And on the offhand, it is now actually a very strong strike weapon, but it was primarily a Condi weapon before. The shield, the utility on it is pretty much unmatched. If you're needing to carry a team for Defiance Break, you'll pretty much want to take a shield. So you can block with the engineer shield, and then you can also throw it, and that throw also is a stun. And if people attack you while you're blocking, they actually do take a stun as well. So pretty much everything that you have on shield in some way, shape, or form will be a form of CC. It's also got a reflect built in. It just lets you be super safe at all times. The rifle, it's our long range weapon, but it kind of feels more like a shotgun because we do have a shotgun blast on it. It has a little bit of might. It has a pretty strong knockback, and it has some mobility with a leap on it. Definitely fun, infamous for the power mech builds for people that remember that day. You see like everyone running around with their everybody running around with the rifle and the mech. But it's a pretty fun weapon. You don't see it too often anymore, but it for what it needs to do, it does it pretty fine. And the short bow, it's dedicated support weapon. It's got combo. When you use one of your 2 through 5 abilities, it leaves a small field on the ground. And then if you use another one on top of it, it essentially does a chain reaction that will do the previous effect but stronger. So if you use the 2 skill on your short bow, it gives some might. If you do it again, it'll give even more might. I believe that one also gives barrier. I'm a little bit lacking on my short bow knowledge because I haven't used it too much since it got released. But it has some CC, it's got protection, it's got Aegis, it's got barrier. The only thing it's lacking in comparison to your mace shield is vigor, but that did get fixed with our medkit. So let's jump into the engineer traits. So we've got our explosives trait. This is primarily going to be used on your DPS builds as well as your boon DPS builds. A lot of what explosives does is going to give you pretty much more direct strike damage with some strike damage multipliers. It also gives you some other ways to apply bleeding. Something that's a little bit fun with this one is that there is a trait in the Grandmaster called Shrapnel, where all of your explosives have a chance to apply bleeds. So now your grenade kit that does 3 explosions every attack has a chance to apply 3 bleed. It makes your explosions.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead and finish that thought.
It also makes your explosives also trigger vulnerability, which makes the engineers a very, very strong source for vulnerability for your party.
I was wondering if the explosives, are the new short bow skills considered explosions? Do they play off that at all? I don't see them notated as explosions. I know you haven't played around with it a whole lot yet, but wanted to ask anyway.
Last time I checked, they were not considered explosions.
Okay.
I would definitely have to fact check on that one, but I'm
I don't
about
think
99% sure they are not.
Yeah.
And you'll be seeing explosives used both in instance PvE, content, PvP game modes. It's a very strong trait line. It's definitely one of my favorites since the game came out. Going to firearms. Again, this is primarily a DPS and a boon DPS focused trait line. This gives us access to a lot of free crit chance, along with increasing the potency for our conditions. It gives us more ways to crit, it gives us more ways to crit if we're close to a target, if a target's bleeding, along with allowing our crits to bleed, so it has some synergy within itself. It also gives you the chance to just burn people when you apply your crits. So it has a lot of synergy within its own trait line. And something that's a little bit fun with this is that similar to our thieves, our brother and sisters as medium armor, The more conditions that an enemy has, the more damage we actually deal to them if you take a certain major trait.
Mm.
So there's a little bit of similarity with there. I think it's kind of fun. The inventions trait line. This is going to be focused more on defense as well as healing. This will be primarily taken from the more support healer playstyle. It's also pretty good for open world as well. A lot of what this trait line has are just healing skills that allow you to have more access to cleanse. It gives access to protection if you're using a shield, depending on what traits that you take. It also can let you get certain boons from turrets. So it actually lets some like the lesser used utility in turrets actually have some play. When it was a little bit more difficult to give Fury as a heal engineer before the relics system came out, it was actually a pretty common trick to take. Let's double check before I say the wrong one.
Welcome, Noemi.
I believe it was the we'd actually take we take rifle turret actually as a healer because that would actually provide Fury. Funny enough. But for the most part, a lot of like the raw healing increases are going to be in inventions, and it's definitely a pretty strong trait line to take as a more support focused build. Alchemy. This is focused more on boons, and it has a lot of ways to increase the potency of our elixirs. And it's taken primarily by like heal supports, and a lot of open world builds tend to like to take alchemy to kind of help with uptime on its own boons.
Makes
It
sense.
also has some increase with healing, along with allowing our elixirs to grant people might. Also even reduces the cooldown on elixirs. It gives a little bit more ways to survive using kits as well. I believe there was a trait where if you have a kit equipped, it would just give you a passive regen. I actually believe this was changed since I made the slideshow. No, it's still on there. Backpacker generator. My bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, nice. Recover health every second when using an engineering kit. Huh, that's neat.
Yeah. Since one of the weaknesses of heal engineers is that they have a little bit harder time healing themselves compared to other people in the party. So having a trait like that can actually help your own self-sustain.
Yes, I have experienced that for sure. Where I'd go into medkit, and isn't there like a single skill in medkit that will actually heal you?
So most of your healing does come from the little like Febreze spray on the auto attack, but that
Yeah.
doesn't heal yourself. So
That's right.
the tool belt heal skill will heal yourself along with the healing burst
Oh,
on
that's
I
right, the
believe
tool.
4.
Yeah, a lot of the times, like when I was doing HTCM and stuff, I'd like run over to Jenny, who was also on a ham, and I'd be like, "Heal me, please! Spray some Windex on me. I can't heal myself."
Yeah. The tool straight line, it's definitely more of the lesser used and more niche of all of the trait lines that we have. It's focused on basically increasing our tool belt skills along with some of our gadgets, and also a lot of synergy with our endurance. So a fun little build that tools actually enables. I've coined a lot of people, and one of the groups I like to interact with a lot has coined it the gear double, which is basically the
Yeah.
daredevil, but for engineer, where we focus on spamming dodge rolls to get a bunch of extra damage multipliers. You basically feel just like a daredevil. It's really fun. It's really fast. Definitely funny to make other DPS players sweat when you're playing it's a core build. It's very fun.
Oh, that's fun.
It's the
So-
cooler rifle there.
So completely ignoring the fact that there's a random S at the bottom, the elite specializations for the engineer. So Heart of Thorns gave us access to the Scrapper. This is going to be more primarily a power DPS as long as a quick DPS and a quick healer. We also have the Hollowsmith from Path of Fire. This is your pure selfish damage elite spec. It does not really have any form of boon uptime for your friends. If you want to be selfish, eventually all roads lead to Hollowsmith. And then in End of Dragons, we got the infamous Mechanist, primarily a condition damage. It does have ability to provide alacrity to your party, and it does have a good amount of barrier output, so it a heal alacrity build to also be pretty popular as well. So, talk about the Scrapper first. It kind of had that like kind of tanky juggernaut kind of aesthetic
Yeah.
at the beginning. Definitely became a lot more potent as a high damage dealing spec kind of more recently in the last few years of the game. It gives access to the gyro elites or utility. These are basically wells, except they follow the engineer and they're centered around you.
Plus you
Before
get
they got
cute little robots.
you do get cute little robots. So before, these were actually like pets that would follow you around, and they had this like super goofy like giant models. They kind of look like the like in like a pool, and you have like the little like plastic
Yeah.
container with the chlorine tablets.
They
It
kinda
looked
float
just like
around.
that, and they would just kind of float around behind you. They get stuck on everything. It was weird.
That's so
But
funny.
now they're wells. They follow you around. They're actually super nice. Unlocking the Scrapper gives you access to the hammer, and this is the way that engineers will give quickness is by using the Scrapper with certain combo finishers. And one thing that Scrapper is definitely known for is its overabundance of super speed.
Hell yeah.
And I can't say how underrated super speed is.
Oh my god,
Just
it's amazing.
having out of combat swiftness speed while you're doing mechanics is so nice.
Seriously, yeah. I love bringing it on Doom and doing like quick scrapper on that, and then
Uh,
it's just so much easier when you're running around the platform all over the place. Like if you have a bomb or something,
oh yeah,
super speed on the ground. But it's still nice to have it like all the time, and
yeah.
not
You
steal
can
it from
give
the kiter.
you can give such a high uptime of super speed. It's super convenient. And one thing that not a lot of people give Scrapper credit for, the so you know how when you change your elite specs, it'll usually change something for your core profession mechanic. For the Scrapper, it will change your F5 tool belt. So your elite will no longer give you a tool belt skill. Instead, you have the function gyro. And the function gyro is actually an AoE res
All hail
that is
function
ranged.
gyro.
A red?
Function gyro. Yeah, it actually does res downstate people. Something that not a whole lot of people know about, but Scrapper, if you're running DPS, but you want to bring some kind of utility, you can hold on to your function gyro instead of using it for damage, and then you can hold it to res your friends. I've used it a lot during Bone Skinner to get people up before they get attacked by the hands. Super clutch. Do not sleep on function gyro. It is amazing.
It is so nice. Like it's on the level with, like a Scourge teleport to you. It's better than Scourge teleport to you than res because it's automated. You just drop it and then it reses. So it's kind of like a Ranger Spirits that res.
Yep. You
I'm
just set
pretty
it, forget it.
sure. I'm pretty sure I learned Bone Skinner because Cinn had function gyro drop.
Yeah, whenever I'm helping teach people Bone Skinner, I definitely always go on Scrapper just so I can help out with the reses just a little bit. So when you go into Scrapper, it gives you access to the hammer, as I mentioned before. It is a high power damage weapon for the engineer. It was actually considered our most powerful power weapon, actually, for the longest time until the sword and the pistol changes. I'd have to do the math on it, but hammer is completely broken.
It's so
You
fun.
have like a reflex every like 5 or so seconds. You have your 3 skills a little bit strange. It is a 3-time. You leap 3 times, and during
the
those sleep
electrical
frames.
reflex?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it does reflect.
Skill 2 does. So you got to be careful about it on like Cairn. But you can also do some cool tech with it on like Bear's Strike, where you reflect back the attacks, the volley that the bow bear does, and that damage is attributed to you when it hits.
And because you're reflecting so often, you can reflect almost every single time that bow bear shoots you. If you're doing like fractals, sometimes when I'm doing like Shadowed Observatory CM, I'll usually switch to Scrapper because Damage Scrapper actually has more power based on your might because they buff their own might for a little bit less condi damage, a little bit more power. And that reflect will actually make anything that you reflect a little bit stronger. So you can get a lot of damage on the second boss when she shoots those little orbs at you.
Can
And
I
you
give
can
a quick
always steal those reflects.
Can I give a quick testimonial about how good hammer is?
Yeah, go for it.
So during the rifle mech meta, I did an IBS clear on a Lark, and we got to the Coden Bears, and I was the quick scrapper, and I came out at the end of the fight as the top DPS above a few rifle mechs, and one of them whispered me, and they're like, "Are you quickness?" I was like, "Yep," and they're like, "What build?" I was like, "Just the build on Snowcrows," and then I told them that I was taking advantage of the fact that Hammer 2 reflects, and so I made sure to, if I had to, do little delays to get the reflex in there and get extra damage, and that excited them so much, they're like, "I'm going to learn how to play that." I was like, hell yeah, like,
Yeah.
don't just limit yourself to one thing on Power Mech, like, play Scrapper, it's amazing.
Oh,
Hammer's a
remember you
very,
telling me
very
about
good
that.
weapon.
Yeah, I remember you showing me the. Remember you showing me that actually. That was really cool.
Yeah, Scrapper is my favorite spec on Engi. Realistically, I primarily play Scrapper. I play Ham because like Mechanist is nice because it's a little more, I guess, in a more approachable version of Engi in a way. Plus, I'm used to playing Ranger and having a pet follow me around. So,
That's pretty valid.
but yeah, Scrapper is just it's a lot of fun, a lot of utility with a lot of damage.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention, because I forgot to say on the last slide, when you are a scrapper, all of the strike damage that you deal will actually turn into a personal barrier for yourself, which kind of
Ooh.
helps with that kind of tanky juggernaut kind of aesthetic. So the higher power damage you're dealing, the tankier you can actually be. So a full damage scrapper, full berserker gear, and you feel like you're running around in like sentinel gear or something. You don't die. It's super nice.
A percentage of the damage you, but
Yeah.
like the balance between the damage we deal versus the health we have and the damage we take, like Scrapper's just always swimming in huge barrier. It's crazy.
So just gonna looking at some of the current more popular builds that are going around. We've got the power scrapper build. So it's pretty easy to set up. You can just run full berserker. You'll have a lot of just uptime on your own personal barriers, which makes the build very, very comfortable. You don't really need to worry too much about taking damage because most of that damage is going to be absorbed by your barrier itself. The rotation, it's pretty easy to kind of pick up. There is like obviously with every build, there's a lot of nuance, but just to pick up and play, Power Scrapper is definitely a good go-to pick if you're trying to figure out engineer to start out. And the build has a lot of burst, and also has a lot of access to CC because it will primarily take the hammer. The hammer does have a stun on it. You can actually use your hammer 3 to leap inside of your lightning field from your stun, and that also will apply the stunning strikes combo, and that will also help with CC. Little underutilized trick.
Yeah,
Engineers.
I definitely don't have the combo skills, like the results memorized, so that's pretty cool. Didn't think of that.
Yeah, I've definitely made
Engineers.
good use of that on CC breaks in fights.
The con with this build is because you're taking the hammer, you're mostly a melee build, so you don't have as much damage from enemies that are far away, but you will generally take the mortar kit and the grenade kit, and you can kind of use that to kind of fill in the gaps when you can't hit the boss. But you won't be nearly as strong as when you can actually be up close and personal with your enemy. But it's still worth noting as well. Quick DPS scrapper. So essentially, it's basically regular DPS scrapper with about one change in traits and a
Ooh, is all the
optional
gear the
change
same?
in utility. Yeah, it is.
Oh.
It's super convenient.
Now, because I don't have like a Condi engineer template, and so I was like, I need to sacrifice a template, so I'll just sacrifice my power scrapper one since they're like the same. I have a power scrapper and a power quick scrapper, and I'll just make them the same.
Yeah. Yeah, all you have to do, you can basically just change your Grandmaster trait. You can even run it with the same utilities as well. If you want it to be a little bit more comfortable, you can change Shredder Gyro to the Blast Gyro. Because the way that this build gives out quickness is every time you do a leap finisher and every time you do a blast finisher, you will give AoE quickness. Now, because you have to rely on the combo fields and the combo finishers in the game, it's not super intuitive for a lot of players. I have talked to so many people that didn't even know about the combo field system in this game. It's not taught very well through the actual game itself. So it's definitely a little bit more tricky to actually produce that quick uptime until you kind of get around learning the combos. A main combo would be using the hammer leap, because that one will give you 2 leap finishers, which will give you 2 instances of quick. You'll also get a blast finisher if you take the blast gyro. You'll usually take throw mine, so your throw mine is also a blast, and you can kind of combo all of these together to give like a big burst of quickness, and then you can try to sustain it as you go through the fight. But it is still a pretty strong option. It definitely works, and once you kind of learn the nuances, you can basically just switch between power or quickness, just depending on what your group needs. It's very flexible and it's very fun. The quick heal scrapper. So this one got a lot more love as of late, which I'm super happy about because Scrapper is awesome, and I think more people should be playing it. It has very high party healing. It also has access to a lot of CC. Because you have access to the shield when you're taking it. Shield by itself has a lot of CC. You do have a open utility, so you could take a utility just for CC if you need it. You also have access to barrier with the bulwark gyro, which was reworked to no longer make you take damage from other people. You now just give out barrier for free, which makes it super, super nice. It's a little bit easier to upkeep your quickness compared to the DPS variant because you will usually run the mace shield, and the mace leap by itself is enough to give you 100% quickness if you use it very often with the high concentration gear. So it's definitely a lot more approachable to actually get that quickness out. And this build has the answer to basically everything as long as you switch your utilities around. So it's because you have access to that extra open utility slot that you don't not mandatory to take, you can kind of change depending on the fight, depending on the situation, which kind of lets you fit that jack of all trades kind of scenario that engineers have. And with the addition to the short bow from Secrets of the Obscure, you can use this for Aegis if you need it, but Mace Shield is more than likely what you're going to be using as your go-to. But it's still an option as well.
A question about Hammer 3, actually.
Yeah, what's up?
So, I think I saw on an earlier slide that you are able to cancel out of Hammer 3. What is the ideal way to cancel out of Hammer 3 if you need to?
Let me grab my hammer. So when you're using hammer, as long as you have a kit, and this is something that's kind of silly with kits, when you're using abilities, you can actually switch into the kit while the ability is still going on. It's like if you're looking at me on the game, if I use my Electro Whirl, I can have the grenade kit in my hands. I'm still spinning it. So you can actually put a kit on and then weapon swap off the kit, and it'll actually cancel the leap.
Oh, okay.
So if I do it like this, I only did 2 because I weapon dropped the grenade kit.
I did not drop the kit fast enough. I'm also using one hand because Lancelot claimed my other hand.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Oh, it said still recharging when I tried to spin. Oh, I think I have to use the drop button. I can't just hit the same.
Yeah.
I can't hit
You'll have to.
grenade. That's sad. Okay, Lancelot.
If you close the kit with the same keybind that you opened, that won't cancel the skill you're casting.
Ah, okay. Okay, it worked that time. Yeah, that's good to know.
So something a little silly I like to do in certain fights, instead of dodging, using my dodge roll, I'll just use one dash of the hammer and I'll just drop it. Because the hammer does have a dodge on it.
That's great.
Lets me greet just a little bit more damage.
Yeah.
Right, the Hollowsmith. This is my favorite spec in the entire game out of every single class. It is aesthetically super, super cool. It's super fast-paced. It's super fun. And as I've mentioned before, eventually all roads lead to Hollowsmith if you're trying to get as much damage out of this class as you'd like to. It is a pure damage-focused build. It is, I would like to say, on the higher end of difficulty and complexity because you end up having this new mechanic, which is a heat gauge, and you'll be building up this heat as you're in the Hollow Forge. And if you overheat and you max out that bar, it'll kick you out of the forge. You won't be able to use your tool belt skills for a while, and you'll take a bunch of damage. But there is a Grandmaster trait where you actually want to overheat on purpose, and that completely changes the way that you think about and play Hollowsmith, which I find very, very fun actually, because you can use the same trait line but have 2 completely different playstyles.
Oh, it uses photon wall now, huh?
Yeah, it does actually.
Ooh, that's exciting that, yeah, actually some of the I always appreciate when some of the elite specs skills get to be used in the actual like skills. You know, as far as like actually
Yeah.
having, you know, like the hollow branded utility skills and everything. So that's cool.
Yeah, like with Scrapper, like we do use our gyros. With Holosmith, we the power build does use 2 of his Exceed skills, and these do have synergy with heat. So the higher your heat for all of these skills, the more potent they will be. They may have an additional effect. They may last longer. They might just hit harder. But overall, just higher heat, higher damage. And then when you max out the Holosmith, you will have access to the sword. So sword is a little bit unique in the sense that the auto attack chain will lower the cooldown of the second and third skill on the sword.
Oh.
So if you are auto attacking more often with the sword, it does allow you to get out a couple more 2s and 3s. As of the most recent patch, they did change some of the numbers around. So you can get the same amount of 2s in the same amount of time, but the base cooldown is a little bit lower. So if you want to use other abilities instead of just auto attacking, it's a little bit easier to do that. The sword also does scale with heat, which is why, as of this patch, Holosmith likes to use sword again if it's a power variant of the build. Talking about the power Holosmith, this build recently just got buffed. It is now focusing on playing around, staying at higher heat for as long as you can without overheating. So the complexity of the build is trying to get as many of these high damaging skills inside of the Hollow Forge, all of these high damaging utility skills without ending up overheating. And the more you can sneak in, the better you're going to end up getting, or the better output you're going to end up getting. I also like to mention a little bit with the Hollow Forge. When you select Holosmith, your F5 ability for your tool belt, kind of like how Scrapper changed it to the function gyro, it will change it to the Hollow Forge. It's going to feel a lot more like a traditional weapon swap. When you enter Hollow Forge, it'll have a cooldown, as if you did a regular weapon swap. So if you go into Hollow Forge at a high amount of heat, you can't drop out of it. So if you go in when you're too high a heat, you might overheat. So you kind of have to think like, hey, can I go into Hollow Forge? Is it safe to yet? Is a lot of this tiny little like split-second decisions if you can go into it or not. Definitely, it's a kind of a high risk, high reward. I find it very fun. You can also play the Condi variant of it. This is potentially one of the... I'm biased. I think this is probably the hardest build in the game to pilot. It runs 3 kits and the Hollow Forge and double pistols. So you're essentially playing 5 different weapons all at the same time.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But it can produce so much damage. And once you kind of get the nuances of the build, it does flow really well, but it's definitely one of those builds you have to put some time into. But there are definitely other Condi variants for Engineer if Condi Hollow seems a little bit daunting. It definitely took me a long time to learn this build. But once you do, it's very, very rewarding, and it feels very good. So moving on to the Mechanist. I don't know what happened to the formatting on this, because I don't remember that being right there.
I don't know why it's being like that, but...
Yeah, well, anyways, so the Mechanist, when you select Mechanist, it will give you the giant robot. It will also change your tool belt skills to now be based off of what traits you have selected for your mech. So instead of it being based on your utilities, it now depends on the traits that you take. And you can only have these mech abilities for your tool belt skills. You no longer have any access to them as soon as you pick mech from your utilities. This will also kind of change the way you heal yourself as a heal mech, which we'll kind of get into a little bit later. But primarily, you'll be focusing more on Condi builds, and it has access to Alacrity, as well as Barrier for healing. It's definitely more on the approachable side for Engineer, I'd like to say. When you fully unlock Mechanist, you'll get access to the Mace. The mace is a support weapon. It has a leap finisher on the 2. It gives a lot of access to vigor, gives a lot of access to regen, and it has good access to barrier. And it does have a pretty low cooldown, pretty good CC ability on the 3 skill. So the mace by itself can actually provide a good amount of CC over the course of a fight. There's a lot of frequent break bars. So I would say one of the more approachable builds for kind of getting into engineer would be the condition mechanist. It has 2 different variants. You can add a second kit when you start to get more comfortable running a single kit on this build. Your mech will actually do a lot of your condi buildup along with your pistols. So you can kind of be in 2 places at once because you can have your mech attacking people, you can be shooting people. And it's just a lot of the pressure is kind of taken off of you because your mech can kind of help carry some of the weight as well. You also have access to signets on Mechanist, and one of the signets you will often take is Ship Signet, which is actually a teleport on yourself. So you can kind of get pretty much anywhere you need to really, really fast. The cooldown is super low, and it kind of gives you that little bit of comfort that a lot of builds don't have, I feel like.
Shift Signet will also, your mech will move to wherever you target it as well. So that can be something, well, A, to just keep in mind as far as your boon up time. If you're shifting to somewhere else and you're wanting your mech to stay on the stack to give boons, it's not going to stay there. It's going to come with you, and you're going to have to tell it to go back over there. Otherwise, it can be good too if you're like, where the fuck is my mech? And you just want it to get to the stack. And you just teleport there yourself along with it. And that works too.
Yeah, the controlling the mech and moving it around Shift Signet is definitely one of the easiest ways to move your mech. You can actually send your mech back pretty much just up into outer space, and then it'll be gone for a couple of seconds. If you reactivate your mech, it'll actually crash back down, and that'll do a very large amount of crowd control. But you can also make your mech kind of fall wherever you want it to be for a good period of time. There's a lot of little tricks you can use to control the mech.
It does take a little bit for you to be able to use crash down after you recall your mech, and it takes a hot second for the recall to actually happen. So it can be a little tricky for timing when to do the CC. You definitely need to anticipate that the CC is going to be happening. Another thing to keep in mind that I learned from recalling my mech is that, I'm trying to remember, I think it's you wait until after the icon for crashing down is totally off its cooldown or something like that. But so if you use barrier signet and then you recall your mech, it'll stay on the mech, and you need to wait until that's done doing its little recharge before you can, like, because it'll go away. So if the mech is gone, then barrier signet's centered on you. So what I've done before is I've like, okay, I'm recalling my mech. It's in the process of shooting up into the air, and then I use barrier signet, and it goes on the mech for some reason instead. And it's because I didn't wait long enough for it to be up in Narnia somewhere. So then it just wastes this barrier signet. So that's something to keep in mind and kind of get used to the timing on that too.
Yeah. Also something I'm definitely going to do, I'm going to reformat this PowerPoint because it's definitely not what it's supposed to look like. Because this next slide, I don't know what happened to it because this slide is very hard to read.
Yeah, it's like it's sometimes actually like doing the full, like, I don't know, the transparency is doing, maybe one of the layers got moved around or something. I don't know.
I think so, because when I was looking at this and I was making this earlier this month, it definitely was not looking like this. So
yeah,
I'll figure that out.
I looked at it. It was not like this before.
So I'll look into it. If I need to reformat, I will. I can resend it to you if you want to post this somewhere for people. But
yeah, I'll probably post it when I push the VOD over to YouTube. I'll put it in the description there. Either I can upload it to like the Guild Wars 2 Girls like folder and just have it in there, so like people aren't going to a specific link that you have, or I can just have it do whatever link you send me.
Okay, yeah, whatever works best.
Okay.
But so there is a Condi Alak build for mech. We in the engineer community like to call it the Scam because it is a simplified Condi Alak mech. It's actually a very fluid rotation. It basically is all based off of your pistol 2, and then you just flip through all of your kits and just hit 2, and you go back to your pistols, and then when 2 is back up, you just flip through all your kits, press 2, and your mech gives all the Alak. Pretty simple, pretty easy, hence simplified Condi Alak mech. It's a scam, but it's not a scam. It's actually quite good. And then Heal-a-Lac mech. This is the build that you mentioned that you have a good amount of experience in.
Yeah.
It does have a open utility slot. It has a good amount of passive barrier. You have access to Might, to Fury, to Regen and Vigor, as well as having boons that do pulls off of the mech. So you do want to make sure that your mech is around the stack as much as you can. You can like manually positioning the mech, or if you needed to like crash it down and before like you're needing it, if you're thinking like ahead of time, like let's say I'm going to use XJJ Strike as an example again. When you're going in between the first area and the second area, and you know how there's those 3 adds you need to CC, that's a really good time to lift your mech, and they can just crash it down on top of that ad. You're not going to need the mech as you're running up, and then you just have free CC. You can also just position it over to there so you can get people boons as they're hitting those ads. One of the cons of Heal-a-Lac mech, its self-healing is a little bit low, and that's because we are missing out on that bandage self ability on the tool belt of the heal skill. You do kind of... It's pretty much like the main weakness to the build, besides all of the boons being, of course, centered around your mech, which pet AI, as we all know, is a little bit silly.
It,
But when the build is
makes some
working...
interesting choices.
Yeah. But when the build is working, the build works really well. And it is a pretty good like healing build to kind of get into for engineer. Kind of something I like to think of as like Mechanist is a good like introduction to engineer, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, because it's like, you know, simple, it's easy, but it's very potent. And then you can kind of branch up from there. If you're liking the condition variants of engineer, you can kind of use Mechanist as a stepping stone to get to Hollowsmith. And then on like the scrapper side, if you're liking the power scrapper, you can kind of use that as a stepping stone to start to kind of inch towards Hollowsmith, because like I said before, for damage, all roads eventually lead to Hollowsmith. I am not biased. So yeah, so basically in conclusion, engineer is kind of a jack of all trades. You basically have the ability to do everything that you need to do with this build. You can be pure power damage, pure Condi damage. You can do quick DPS, a lack DPS, quick heal, a lack heal. You can do it all. It's objectively the coolest class in the game, and the reason is because I said so. And just very versatile, and just overall aesthetically, it's just really, really cool. That's all I've got right now for the PowerPoint.
How about Lancey just got up, so he was very like, all right, I guess we're done with the class, I'm leaving. That's what he says. He's off to his, we call it the little gentleman's club. He's got like a little spot that he hides out behind the couch. Okay,
No, I
so
got
he's
you.
not going there. Okay, anyways. Yeah, does anyone have any questions, I guess, as the first thing here?
And then I have a handful of little like tricks I can kind of go over with some of the
Yeah.
some NG stuff I've kind of thought of.
Let me I'm gonna hide the PowerPoint bit. Oh, unless you were gonna stream like you personally doing it, but I can also probably, it depends if you want people to see like your keys while you're doing it.
Yeah, I can do it like that as well. Whatever works best for you.
Oh, I'm in HoloForge and I didn't know it.
Oh.
I just like moved what was on my screen and was like big red char. And I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, I can share my screen for a handful of these.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Okay, so just kind of to show again with like canceling the hammer on the dash. When you're using abilities with the hammer, I can have my kit as I'm doing the animation. So like if I want to cancel all three of these leaps, like your animation lock during that entire time. But you can drop the kit during any point of this hammer to stop that. You can actually use kits to get out of pretty much any animation lock in the game.
Yeah.
So if you are doing, say, the special action key in Bone Skinner, and all those circles happen to appear under your feet, and you don't really know what to do, you're stuck because you can't move, and you're probably going to die. Well, if you switch to a kit, and then you drop it, you can actually move immediately. something that not a lot of people know about. You
Show
still
the
can't.
elixir gun cancel.
I will show the elixir gun cancel. So the elixir gun cancel. There we go. So elixir gun. When you use the acid bomb on elixir gun, it launches you back. It's a blast finisher, and it's also an elixir. So if you take the alchemy traits, you can actually provide might to your party, which I believe I have something on here I can do. So I can use like the acid bomb, apply some might to myself, apply might to everybody around you. But you're flying out of the stack. Maybe you're gonna fly into some fire, or you just need to continue to give boons out. You need to heal.
I
So what you can
definitely
actually
haven't
do-
just flown off of a Twisted Castle platform while waiting to go into the center platform. I was like, I was on Heal Scrapper, yeah, back when I was like using Elixir Kit, and we're waiting to go to the center platform where Zira is. I'm facing the center platform where Zira is. Going to be rather. And then I used Elixir Gun 4 to like pre-stack might, and for some reason it launched me off the platform forward.
Oh,
And it's supposed to like I don't understand what happened. Yeah, it was an interesting experience.
yeah. But what you can do to cancel that backwards motion is you can actually just drop the elixir gun. So you drop the elixir gun when you use the acid bomb, and you'll drop it right back down on the ground. You'll still get the elixir gun
So
out, you still get the might, but you don't move anywhere. But if you do it a little bit too fast, you might
Oh, yeah, I
cancel the
did.
acid bomb. So it's a little bit of a tricky timing. Takes a little bit of
Okay.
practice, but once you get it, it's very consistent. And now you have an acid bomb that's always on
Ooh, I did it
that's
that
always on
time.
your feet. And then if you want to use it for movement, like you need to like move away from mechanic and you want to run, like you can always just use the acid bomb for movement. It sends you really far, but it gives you a lot more control over your character. Let's see. So a fun trick that we can do, because engineers, you can have 2 weapon like slots, but you can only use one of these in combat. So like if I were to summon a golem and just slap it real quick, I'm not going to be able to swap weapons when I'm attacking it. So as you can see, so now that I'm in combat, the weapon swap is grayed out. I'm not able to switch weapons in combat, but we're actually able to essentially make use of the lack of weapon swap as an advantage. Let me just turn off this golem real quick. So something that you can do is, let's say you're in open world and you just have like 2 hammers, but then one hammer you have a stacking sigil, the other hammer you just have 2 actual sigils that you care about. So you would start out using the hammer with the stacking sigil, and then once you get that fully stacked, when you get out of combat, you then switch to your hammer that has 2 actual sigils, but you still keep the stacks afterwards.
Oh.
So you essentially have 3 sigils during combat. So this is actually really prevalent in Wing 1 for raids, after you beat the Veil Guardian, and you kind of go through the Spirit Run. You can actually stack up a sigil using 1 weapon during that whole event, and then you can keep those stacks as you go to Gorseval. You can use those stacks going into Sabbatha, assuming that you don't die. And you can essentially have 3 sigils for the entirety of that raid wing after that first
Damn.
boss.
Wait, so are the stacks like permanent until you like leave instance, basically?
They're permanent until like you leave instance or you die.
Wow.
I don't remember if they go away when you go down. I think Scar would probably know better than me.
Yeah, they're removed if you go down.
Okay.
So
And if
long-
you ever like unequip the weapon, then you'll lose it. I've done that by mistake sometimes because I'll get to Spirit Woods and be like, oh, I had this habit of using a specific gear and boon template for stealth skips. So I had to break the habit of destroying my Bloodlust stacks whenever I got to the buttons at the end of Spirit Woods.
Oh.
Like what I'll do is like I'll switch to, because I usually play Hollowsmith and raids. I'll just switch to Power Scrapper and I'll just put like a Bloodlust sigil on my hammer, And then once I get all the stacks, I'll just switch to Hollowsmith with my sword and pistol, and then I'll keep all those stacks for the entire fight.
Ooh, so you can template swap and you'll still get it. That's nice.
You can, as long as you're not switching the armor template, but you can switch the
Oh,
trait.
the equipment template, or excuse me, the trait template, build template. That's what it's called.
Yeah, build template.
I was like,
But
what's
you
that
can't
thing
switch
called?
it. You can't switch the armor, but you can switch the traits, and you're completely fine. But that's always a fun little trick because you can walk around with just all these stacks, and you can do this in open world too, where you just kind of start out in the map using a weapon that has a stacking sigil, and then once you get fully stacked, you just switch out, and now you're walking around with full stacks and 2 weapons with actual sigils that you want.
And if you want to, if you're in open world, put the same stacking sigil in your underwater weapon, because otherwise, if you dip underwater, you'll lose your stacks.
Oh,
That is true. That is something I totally forgot to do in World v World.
There's some weird rules with how it works with, I think, legendary sigils that are bloodlust, which is kind of annoying, but doesn't really matter for the context of raids because you're never going to dip underwater.
Yeah.
thank God. Well, I mean, technically you might if you fall off the platform in Largos.
That's true.
I don't think you swap to like underwater weapons there though. I think you just get nothing. So I don't know how that would change it. Oh, sorry, Lancey.
So if you're swimming but you don't go underwater, I don't think that takes your stacks away because I've done
Okay,
that
that's
before
good.
in World v World. But as soon as you go underwater and you pull out the harpoon gun, then it's over. Unless you have the sigil in your harpoon gun. Yeah, those are 3 quick little tricks I thought would be kind of useful for pretty much every level of Engi.
As the resident thief, have you talked about stealth access on engineer?
I have not talked about stealth access, but I can mention that right now, actually.
It's a good idea.
So you have stealth access on bomb kit as well as
Ooh.
Scrapper itself. So using the smoke fields from the bomb kit number 4, which I'll just link in chat real quick, this will provide a smoke field.
And then you blast it, right?
Yep, so we can use blasts, we can also leap through this, and that'll give us access to some stealth. And if we use blast, as we all know, blast, usually those effects are AoE, so that'll give us access to AoE stealth. So like I can use the acid bomb from the elixir gun, I can use the big old bomb from the bomb kit, and I'll give like about, I think it was like 6 seconds of stealth.
Yeah, 5 or 6, something like that.
If I grab the Scrapper Elite is just the sneak gyro. So this is a smoke field that will be following you around, and is also just gonna be pulsing out pulsing out stealth the entire time as you have this out. And then you can still blast this, you can still leap through it. It'll give you a ton of AoE stealth. Really good for stealth skipping during fractals, or if you're trying to just like sneak into a boss a little bit faster.
You hear that, Tracy? If you keep bringing Scrapper to to fractals, you start doing some. Well, 1 million invis with all the mesmers and
Yeah, I've
Scrapper.
been using the stealth gyro.
definitely.
And taking that stealth gyro, it's a really small damage loss. You're really not going to notice it too much. So if you feel like you're going to need the stealth at any time, you can just take the gyro.
I don't even take the mortar kit, I don't even use the mortar kit.
It does have a water field, which can be pretty nice for either blasting it for the group or just putting it down and then doing hammer 3 inside of it for self-sustain. There's also some stuff I want to add for Elixir Stealth. So Elixir S, which the first ability is a defensive cooldown for yourself. The
Yeah.
tool belt version puts stealth onto you and allies. There's also a trait in tools called Power Wrench, where every time you dodge, you reset the cooldown of the elite skill. So you can sneak gyro, and then you run with the group, dodge, drink elixir R, I think, which refills your endurance fully, dodge, and that'll cut 12 seconds off the cooldown of sneak gyro. If you chain those enough, you can have really good uptime of stealth on engineer without even stopping to blast. Because depending on the blast you're using, if it strikes enemies, it's going to reveal. So taking advantage of power wrench like that is a really cool way to get even better usage out of sneak gyro. Because in a fractal, you can sneak gyro, grab the mislock, keep running. When it's going to wear off, sneak gyro again, and then start using power wrench dodges to reduce the cooldown. And then you'll throw Elixir S partway through that for even more group stealth.
Power wrench?
Yeah,
So-
it's the first trait in tools. Cinn was grabbing it on their POV.
Yep, so even outside of combat, every time they use a dodge roll, it will reduce the cooldown of your elite skill by about 3 seconds.
Oh, so just dodge around, basically.
Yep,
And
much,
then reduce
which
it.
is-
Okay.
There's one quirk to this. Can you select a different trait other than power wrench? It's like take the option right above it.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
What's the
Then use sneak gyro. And then once you've cast sneak gyro, turn power wrench on and try to start dodging.
It's weird. I still have stealth. Yeah, you swapped and you lost your stealth.
Oh, that is strange.
Yeah, so power wrench supposed to be set before you use the cooldown, or it won't start resetting, but they might have changed that recently.
I know, so... it was still resetting it.
Okay, that's good then. So
Yeah.
I guess they changed that function now.
But whenever like you switch a trait, it'll get rid of stealth because they were. It was like a
Yeah.
couple of years ago, and they didn't want people to do all that like weird pre-stacking like stealth stuff.
Yeah,
and
it was the
switching.
status reset thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, they did fix the power wrench glitch.
The one thing though, since it's gotten some buffs in this patch, even if you're not going to use Mortal Kit, don't bring and use Sneak Gyro in a fight if there's a Deadeye.
Yeah.
At least in the
They'll be
subgroup,
very
but honestly,
sad.
even in the squad, because
They'll troll your
Sneak
Deadeye.
Gyro is not just a self field; it's also a smoke field, so you can blast for more. And that's just it
There's
can
a
also
lot-
like hurt people who are like trying to play Hollow-Smith really precisely because they won't actually input auto attacks while they're in Forge. They'll just let the game do that for them. And if you stealth people who are doing that, they just stop auto attacking,
Yeah,
which is
So
pretty
nuanced.
scary because Photon Forge builds up heat passively, so it can throw you off your rhythm. Suddenly get stealthed.
I don't know if any other weapons are like that, but the Engineer Sword, the Hollowsmith auto attack, and I think Firebrand Axe, if you mash the auto attack, it comes out slower for some reason.
Interesting.
So you just want to kind of let it go. Super weird to get used to.
There's a little bit of your Firebrand trivia there, Zell. we'll do an actual class on it later, which I was saying in chat, I did one on Firebrand sometime last year, but it was the first series that I did of the classes. I don't think I streamed it, so should do a new one. But Scar, since you manage a couple of the builds for Firebrand, I wouldn't mind having you tag along for that one.
Sure.
Cool. I'll let you know, of course, when I actually get around to scheduling it.
Oh, kind of speaking of that, Cinn gave the earlier note about you can open a kit and use that same skill to close the kit. So not the weapon
Ah.
swap thing. You can use the same skill to close the kit. That won't interrupt skills. That also applies to Firebrand's tomes, and that applies to going into Elementalist attunements, unless you're using a Tempest overload. If you're doing like Fire overload and you swap to air, you will actually interrupt the Fire overload. But those are the only Elementalist skills that are like that.
Huh.
You can actually, it's like if you have your autocast enabled and you're in Fire attunement, you can start the Fire attunement auto change, but you can start the Fire attunement auto attack chain, swap to another attunement, and the game will complete the Fire attunement auto chain if you don't do anything else. So, like, Elementalist attunement swapping is actually extremely smooth. It's smoother than anything that weapon swaps, because there's no interruption. You can just chain the skills together without having to actually time what you're doing. And that's the thing that like will let a very good, especially a conditional Holosmith player, that's one of the things that'll let them go through their kit so quickly, is that you can lean very hard on your speed. You're not checked for like very precise timing at every single step.
Yeah, because you can preemptively swap into the next kit that you're going to go to as you're using the ability from the other kit. You can do that with certain skills as Holosmith going into Photon Forge. It will cancel weapon skills, but if you're using any of your tool belt skills or the utility skills, you can actually cast those and then go into Photon Forge as you're still
Should be
using
the
that
same
ability.
as Druid Celestial Avatar. Like if you're using a staff skill or a weapon skill, CA will cancel it, but you retain access to utilities. Unlike Reaper or like Necromancer and Spectre Shrouds, which remove all other abilities when you go in, so they cancel everything. Kind of weird that we have these inconsistencies, but
It's a little strange. I think it might just be the way it's coded between like a weapon skill and just a non-weapon skill. I'm not entirely sure. It's a little
because
bit
like
of a
moving from a weapon, like a rotation that stays on one weapon versus one that weapon swaps, you have to be a little bit better at the swapping because you can lose time doing it. Whereas kits are just, oh, they're so smooth. They feel so good once you know that they won't interrupt your current skill.
Yeah, I love that about kits.
Like especially the hammer 2 spin, since it's reflecting, it feels so
Yes.
good to like do the spin, know that you're protected from projectiles, and break out a kit skill on top.
That is something I
Like you can
want.
do the spin because something in PvE is shooting you, whip out your mortar kit, and like shoot the blinding field into the ground so that their follow-up attacks can't hurt you. Kits are so fun.
The one thing, speaking of the hammer spin and swapping right into a kit, that I did want to kind of mention is, at least with regards to hammer, especially when there was a hammer supremacy for a bit, it looks like Hollow is back to actually using sword again, which, to be honest, I like. I think that they should use their spec weapon. But the primary like DPS rhythm for, and obviously like Cinn, you can correct me on this, but if any part's missing here, but is for like power scrapper is you, and power quick scrappers, you drop down your lightning field with 5, then you do 2, and then you go into your kit and do 2 as well while you're sort of spinning around. Then you go back and then you auto, and the rest of the time you end up doing filler skills. But that's the thing, and you want to make sure that you're finishing your auto chain as well. So you go in here, and obviously I don't have any alacrity right now or anything. I do 5, 2, immediately go into the kit because it doesn't interrupt. Do 2 and then drop it, rinse and repeat.
So a lot of the power engineer builds will, like using the sword and using hammer, you can actually link the second ability on the grenade kit with the second ability of the weapon, which is one reason why grenades are kind of like married to the DPS builds. So you are right, a lot of Scrapper is going to basically be hammer 2, grenade 2, and then you just throw in some filler until you can hammer 2, grenade 2, fill in with some filler, hammer 2, grenade 2, and then fill with filler. And a good way to kind of ease into the build is like you would just start out just making sure that you always get that hammer 2, grenade 2 rhythm, and then making sure that you finish all your auto attack chains. Then you can start adding in some other abilities. Then you would add in making sure you always get your hammer 5 going, hammer 2, grenade 2, and then make sure you always get those on cooldown. Then you're going to start adding the gyro, where you use Shredder Gyro, and the hammer 5 together, because their cooldowns line up. You shoot out vulnerability with the brutal bolts, and then hammer 2, grenade 2, and keeping those always together. And then just as you get more comfortable, you can then add more things to the fill. But the biggest important thing is that you always want to complete auto attack gens, and then you always want to keep your hammer 2 and your grenade 2 together.
Also, there's an afford. Sorry, gone.
No, you can go.
There's an affordance when you stick to the hammer 2, grenade 2, which is that if you also want to cast grenade 5 and grenade 4, are those still good DPS fillers without fireworks? Cinn?
I think they're still being used.
Grenade 5, yes. For Holosmith, grenade 4 is a DPS loss now. I can't say for
Okay.
Scrapper, I haven't done the math yet.
But it kind of goes for like any kit where you have them synced up. you'll go in. So hammer 2, open the grenade kit, grenade 2, and then during that time, you can check, is my grenade 5 off cooldown? Yes? Okay, I'm going to use it. If not, okay, I'm just going to... Firebrand does the same thing. You have a visible cooldown that you track, which is a utility skill. And when that skill is available, use it, crack open your book, cast skill 5. Are there other skills I can cast here? Yes, no. So it reduces how much you have to actually track cooldowns you can't see. Because beyond saying, oh, these have the same cooldown, link them up, you have an obligatory moment where you open up the kit, and now you can see those cooldowns. Because what we don't want to be doing is opening a kit and being like, okay, I'm going to cast a skill, and all the good ones are on cooldown. Oof.
Yeah. So one of the things where you just kind of get more used to playing engineers, you'll use weapon skills to kind of track your invisible cooldowns on your kits. So like with hammer and with sword, when the 2 is available, the grenade kit 2 is always going to be available. When you're playing, say like Condi Mechanist for using pistol, the grenade 2 will be up twice. You can use grenade 2 twice per pistol 3. So when you use pistol 3, then you grenade 2. When your pistol 3 is about halfway done, you can go back into the grenade kit. And if poison grenade's up, you might as well use it. And then when you use your pistol 3, pistol 4, your grenade's ready to be used again. And then when it's halfway up, your grenade kit's ready to be used again. So you use other abilities that kind of track your other abilities.
Have you talked about how cool AED is?
Oh, we
So
haven't.
So AED is one of my favorite heal skills in the game. So essentially what this will do is it will put a buff on you that lasts for about 5 seconds. If nothing happens to you and you stay perfectly healthy, the AED will just heal you for a small amount of damage. It's not really worth mentioning too much. But let's say in those 5 seconds you die. So instead of dying, it will actually heal you by about 3 times as much and also remove all of the harmful damaging conditions that you have on yourself. So if like maybe you're trying to agree a mechanic that will kill you, or maybe you can't get away from something, it's going to hit you, it's going to do a lot of damage, you can just preemptively use AED, and then you'll survive, because when you take that damage, instead of taking the damage, it'll just heal you back up. And the tool belt skill on AED is super fun. The tool belt skill is static shock, and that is a really high defiance break as well. So now you have the strong self-heal as a DPS, but you also now have a built-in CC. So if you're a damage engineer, you have no excuse for not helping with the damage break bar. You can always contribute a little bit no matter what. Also, if you're a scrapper, then the static shock will also provide your team with super speed as well. Right now, I simply don't just get it to yourself. Yeah, sorry, it's yourself. Give yourself 7 seconds of super speed whenever you use your F1 ability. The heal skill gives AoE super speed.
Yeah, I love having... Oh, right, the tool belt skill is. Is that what you said?
Yeah, the tool belt gives you a lot to yourself, and then the heal skill gives
oh, yeah,
it
the
around
super
you.
Speed, yeah. Does a
There's a-
surprising amount of damage with static shock.
Yeah, you can actually use the static shock as a filler if you know you don't need it for the CC, because if you know a Defiance break bar is coming up, just hold it and use it for the break bar. But it's stronger than just doing one hit of the auto chain. So if you're doing filler, you're not going to have enough time to do an auto attack chain, you could just use static shock and then hammer 2, grenade 2.
How does hollow rotation compare?
So that depends on if we're talking about the power hollow or if we're talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
the
How about
condition
power
hollow. So power hollow, it's focused on trying to keep a high heat. So right now with the current version of the build and the old one with hammer and wanting to overheat is still completely viable. It's still completely
Okay.
fine. But right now, the version of the build that most people are going to be playing pretty soon is the stay at high heat without blowing yourself up build.
That one
So if
requires
we-
a bit of babysitting.
Yeah. So if we see here with the current build, which I'm using the one from Snow Crows right now, we have 150 heat instead of the normal 100 heat. And the reason why we take this trait is because the exceed skills, like the photon wall, will give you a bonus when you're at over 50% and over 100% heat. So this is why you're wanting to stay at this upper level of heat on top of a trait called Laser's Edge. So Laser's Edge is a buff that kind of fluctuates depending on how much heat you have, and it will dynamically change as you get more heat. At the very height of your heat gauge, it will give you about 22.5% more damage, and then you'll have 0% bonus damage if you have 0 heat. So this is why you're wanting to stay as high of heat as possible without overheating, as this buff is huge, and the buff to all these exceed skills is huge. Blade Burst gets 50% more damage, Particle Accelerator gets 50% more damage, Laser Disc lasts longer and does 50% more damage. It's a little silly.
Yeah.
On top of just Hollow Forge abilities just hit hard. Like, I have no might, and Photon Blitz says it's going to do 5,700 damage. It's really silly. So what you will end up doing is you'll want to be at high heat. The rotation is going to be focused around entering Forge and then using Corona Burst, your 3. You'll want to use as many of the utility skills while you are in Hollow Forge as possible, as well as Photon Blitz. And then before you leave Photon Forge, before you overheat, you want to Chrono Burst a second time. So the checklist will be 2 Chrono Bursts, 1 Blitz, and as many utility skills as possible to take advantage of that buff. When you exit the Forge, you'll see that your heat will start to drop down. This is when we kind of go into the cooldown phase of Hollowsmith rotation. Because our sword also scales with our heat, another reason I want to stay at the high heat is our sword 2 is one of our strongest attacks, and this will shoot a certain number of blades out of the sword depending on your heat level. It'll shoot 5 if you're at that really high echelon of heat, and ultimately the goal is we want to try to get 3 of these before we go back into Hollow Forge. So when I'm trying to teach people how to go into basically learning Hollowsmith, we'll start out by just trying to get used to getting your 2 Chrono Bursts and your 1 Photon Blitz in Forge without overheating. And then when we get out of Forge, just use Sword 2 and just auto attack until you can use 2 again, auto attack till you can do 2 again, go back into Forge. As long as we get 3 of those Sword 2s in, and then we go back into Hollow Forge, that's kind of the pace we want to go into.
Okay.
And the complexity gets into adding in other abilities. Now with the changes to Sword, like, we also want to try to get 2 uses of Blowtorch, because that just got buffed, because Pistol is really funny.
Yeah.
We can use Glue Shot, which also got buffed, and
Yeah,
also
sounds
gives you
nuts.
Fireworks. Oh, actually, I can show that too. So normally when you use an ability that gives you Fireworks, Grenade Barrage will also get Fireworks now. It'll last for about 5 seconds, or 6 seconds, and it'll go away, right? So the Pulsing Field from Glue Shot actually will refresh Fireworks. So Glue Shot by itself actually makes Fireworks last for about 9 seconds ish.
Huh.
So it's actually a pretty good Fireworks enabler. For some reason, Grenade 4 and Grenade 5 do not give Fireworks buff anymore. People are thinking because they removed it from bundles and kits are technically coded as a bundle,
Yeah.
you don't get it from that anymore. So people are like, oh no, how do we keep up Fireworks? Turns out having it on Static Shock, on Grenade Barrage, Blade Burst, and the extended amount on Glue Shot, you can keep it up for plenty of time.
Ooh, that's nice.
And if upkeeping that is, it's a little tricky, and you might still want to try to get used to just the basics of Hollow, you can just run Thief Relic. It's perfectly fine. But Hollowsmith and Scrapper will kind of share that, Hammer 2, Grenade 2. With Hollowsmith, it's Sword 2, Grenade 2. So then another thing I would then have people start practicing is, okay, you'll Sword 2, Grenade 2, then you'll auto attack, and then Sword 2, Grenade 2, then you'll auto attack.
Okay.
And
So
then once
similar
you
to
can-
Hammer, where you do 2 and then into the grenade kit and back out again.
Yeah, it has a very similar flow, where you're basically using the second skill of your weapon, the Grenade 2. You're going to add some filler, do the weapon 2, Grenade 2 again, and then add some filler. The main, like this the biggest addition with Holosmith is you do need to do some auto attack chains because it makes your sword 2 come faster,
Okay.
and you have to manage the heat. But it has a very similar flow to Scrapper. It's basically just Scrapper with extra steps.
Okay. I don't know if this is an answer that you'll know or not, but I don't think I have seen Dragon's stats used on any other build other than Engi.
Dragon
Um,
Hunter.
It seems to be using just a couple of Dragon's pieces on like the Power Hollow, and the rest is Zerker, and then on like Power Quick, Scrapper, and on Power Scrapper, they're also using a good chunk of Dragons mixed with Zerkers.
Yes, so because we get about like 30% crit from firearms by being close to the target and by them bleeding, we actually overcap a little bit on crit if we're running
Ooh.
pure Berserker. So you can take about 1 or 2 pieces of Dragon. I believe it was, I think on the bench, Cody was using Pants. And it's a very, very small
Pants
gain,
and
but
back piece.
it's more than 0. It's not going to like make or break your run. If you don't have access to dragons, it's not a big deal. If you don't want to craft the dragons, it's not a big deal. If you have access to it, it's free. Get a little bit more vitality as well. Lets you be a little bit more comfy.
Oh yeah, I
And
guess it gives a
still a
little more ferocity than Berserkers does.
Yeah.
And gives vitality, but gives less precision and power. Interesting.
Yeah, and since we already have enough crit, losing a little
Yeah.
bit of precision, you don't really care too much about that. So having that extra ferocity ends up being better than losing a little bit of power.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, stuff like that is very interesting. The differences between classes and everything.
Yeah.
So as
Definitely
a funny
interesting.
example, Zoa, one of the other builds that you'd think would have an opportunity to wear dragons would be Thief, since it can get access to a lot of extra precision,
yeah.
especially Deadeye. But Thief has a trait that converts precision into ferocity. So as long as that trait exists,
Oh.
taking dragons is counterproductive.
Yeah, huh.
There's one funny scenario where Thief does run dragons, and that's if you just want to play pistol-pistol. A-Net buffed the pistol piercing trait, so it's worth taking because it buffs the pistol damage enough. And that is mutually exclusive with the precision converting trait. So you could actually wear some Dragon's gear on Thief if you're just playing the spam 3 forever pistol build.
I
Oh,
kind
that's
of
actually so
really want to
funny.
play that build.
I just love the way that you're just running around, just going double pistol. It's so funny.
Unload! Unload's so much fun.
Dragon Hunter, if running Radiance to overcap crit, also wears a lot of Dragon's gear, because at that point
Okay.
you have so much crit, and your ferocity is low enough on Power Guardian that it's worth putting on Dragon's gear. But just being overcapped on crit is not like the reason to go into dragons.
Mm-hmm.
The power and ferocity have to be balanced, because they're just multiplying 2 numbers together to get a bigger number. So you just balance those out a bit.
If you have too much of one compared to the other, you get diminishing returns on those.
Okay.
That's all fun math stuff.
Let's see. I guess give the chat here if you've got any other questions, put them in. Otherwise, it seems like we're kind of winding down now. Yeah, it definitely will be interesting. It was great to kind of touch on everything a little bit here, and will be cool to hopefully do some future classes where we can dive into getting the rotation down. People can come into the raid training area with us and kind of practice the rotation and stuff. If only
for
we
sure.
could bring squads in.
Yeah, I can teach Scrapper. I can teach for rotations for DPS. I can teach Scrapper. I can teach Hollow. I can teach Mech.
Cool.
Because I do think that Mech does kind of lead into Condi Hollow, and then Scrapper does kind of lead into Power Hollow.
Okay. Sounds like I should probably go to Power Hollow next. If I'm gonna. Except it's so hard. It's so hard. I want to keep up with literally every single build in the game, and I can't. I can't hug all the cats.
Yeah.
Do you know where you can find good builds, though?
Oh, I don't know, Scar.
I wonder
tell me.
where.
Hard stuck, dodgy. No.
Oh. Yeah, snow crows. That's where I get all of mine. So
Yep, I definitely go over there for all of mine.
you are right, Jen. It's snow crows.
Little known group.
Yeah, small known. They're very tiny.
I think I've heard of them somewhere.
Yeah.
Part
It's a
of
kind
me
of bird.
part of me is
Oh,
scared
yeah.
to go anywhere other than snow crows because I know Zarg and Scar would know. No.
Oh my god.
I mean, at this point, we have so many. Like, Power Harv is on the site. Heal Spectre is on the site.
I'm so sad that I
There's-
forgot to post this last night, but there was
Oh wait, Power Harp is on there now?
Yep.
Ooh, I've been wanting to try that one out actually. I want to
It
throw
is
Eternity at
pretty
people.
spicy.
oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, there was so before the Weapon Master training came out in season of the Gear, you could technically equip a greatsword as a Reaper and then just switch to Harbinger. You technically have it in your hand, but you don't have the ability to use any attacks. But if you switch into Shroud, you still get the special animation for it. So you would be throwing legendary greatswords as a Harbinger, and it looks really funny. Now it actually works, so I want to make my dream a meme. Or my
Yeah, do it.
Zargle brought Power Harp to Prog Raids last
Oh.
week, I think. And he did like in between Gorsey and Sabbatha, he did over 100 KGPS on Cleave.
That's incredible. Yeah, I've been looking forward to that build ever since I saw the kind of like the teaser for the patch notes. It was that and them buffing Hollow Smith that made me so happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to see more hollows around. I don't see
I'm
them.
seeing so many hollows.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm having to fight for my life on the leaderboards right now.
Anger rising.
Okay, cool.
It's also really cool
go ahead.
to have Photon Wall in the rotation because it's like Dragon Hunter's F3 Shield of Courage, where you can block for other people if they are in between. Basically, the shield is in front of you, and if they are just behind that shield, so like right in front of your toesies, they can be blocked as well.
And the another little fun thing with it too. If you're above a heat threshold, which if you are playing Power Hollow, you more than likely will be. This wall actually does reflect projectiles while it's up,
Yeah.
so you can kind of hold it for a bit before you shoot it out.
Someone used that on Matthias last night as backup. They're like, yay!
That's
That's
such a good
awesome.
idea.
I mean,
There
you might
you
as
go.
well. It's
Tracy,
free.
has your static done all Engi raids yet? There's your Matthias. Well, plus
You-
with Hammer too.
You got Hammer 2, you got Shield 4. You can have the hollows also
There's
help
a lot
out.
of reflex, yeah.
Yeah. Granted,
Speak-
it's a little tough, but you can make it work.
Speaking of blocks, if you ever want to see how amazing Engineer Shield 5 can be, the one that stuns when you block, take it to Bone Skinner, and when the break bar comes up, put up Shield 5 and walk into the pile of hands. Because every hand that strikes you will stun Bone Skinner. There's also other enemies in open world who do like 1,000,000 blocks using Shield 5.
Every time that somebody hits you, it is a 100 Defiance break. So that can actually stack up, and then you can Captain America throw it
Hell yeah.
at the end of it.
We need a shield that looks Captain America-y.
Right? That'd be cool.
So we can make a Captain America engineer. Okay.
But yeah,
Well-
I'm definitely down to teach more like specifics on rotation for builds if there's interest in that.
Definitely. There's just so many to go over. And I only I'm trying to restrict myself now to like one of these a month. Especially once the summer comes, like I'm gonna be running around enjoying the temporary sunshine that we have in the Pacific Northwest until it becomes rainy season again. So and we're like just entering into that sunny season, so yeah, definitely not gonna be doing more than like one a month. But we'll get more of those planned. As far as within Guild Wars 2 Girls, I usually in the announcements post every month that people can kind of like vote for whichever one they want me to do next, and I take that into account. If you are not in the guild and you're here listening on stream and you have a request for a specific class that you want to see, feel free to shoot me a message. You can, I don't know, you can either do it in chat here or you can find me on Discord. I'm just Zoalera on Discord,
Healthy and hale.
just like my Twitch name. So, otherwise, the next ones we have planned, we've got a Willbender class coming up with Pixel on next Friday,
Rising.
actually. That'll be next Friday. And then May 17th, I will be doing an Untamed class. So we'll primarily spend the time kind of going over the rotation, practicing the rotation, giving rotation feedback, since, you know, I don't think I can spend 2 hours just talking about what Untamed can do. I can probably spend like 20 minutes on that, and then the rest of the time we can kind of go over and work on rotations and stuff. Yeah. So thank you everyone for coming and hanging out. Thank you, Cinn, so much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
You want Eglar? Do you want me to do a golem pull right now? You want to? Cinn's gonna do a better golem pull than I will. I don't even know the DPS rotations on Engi very well. We do a golem pull as we
We can do it all.
tune out here or whatever. Snooze it there on Cinn's DPS of choice, which is likely going to be Hollow. Otherwise, I have my normal streaming that I usually do for raids on Sundays. We're not raiding this Sunday, though. And Guild Wars 2 Girls on Thursdays, we do
Feel
raids.
free to approach
Healthy
the
and
council and
hale.
begin combat practice. If you have any questions, I'm all ears.
Oh my god.
How much
What
HP do you want to do on the
nest of
golem?
kittens. Yeah, go ahead and do it. Yeah, just do a poll whenever you are ready.
Healthy and hale.
Were we gonna hit the same golem?
Oh, yeah, I
No.
was just gonna let you do it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, pressure.
I mean, yeah, I can do it at the same time. I'll do Scrapper because, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing on Hollow.
All right, if you want to do like a countdown, we can
Yeah,
do that.
okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Healthy and hale.
Oh, I forgot to do my hammer. Hammer 2, I just went straight into Grenade Kit. Pop my elite. My elite's just Eglar like trolling me over here. It's just a stealth gyro.
Now that's teamwork.
Can't take much more.
Here, there you go. I popped my elite for you just for fun. And I end with a hammer 3 to take me off into Narnia just for fun. Dang, look at that. Up at 43, Cinn. That's juicy.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Thermal release complete.
I apparently me doing stealth gyro fucks you over somehow. That's what Eglar's saying in chat.
It does a little bit.
Oh,
But
is
it's
it
not a
not
big
good
deal.
if you're stealthed?
So when you go into stealth, it actually turns off your auto attack. And as a Hollowsmith, if you're
Oh.
trying to get like the min-max damage, because if you mash sword auto, hollow forge auto, it's actually slower than just taking your hands off the keyboard.
Okay.
So if you
okay.
stealth and I don't notice it, I'll just stand there awkwardly, just
I've
wondering like, huh?
done that
What is this?
myself.
So what is the sleep timer on this thing? It punted me to the inactive channel.
What?
Oh.
It should be like 5 minutes of like no activity at all. That's
Oh.
very strange. I was wondering. I was like, oh, Tracy left, but I didn't see you in like the sleepy channel. I thought that like maybe your connection borked or something.
No, it did put me into the sleepy channel.
That's so strange.
Oh, that's so funny. The daily today is doing combo finishers, so I got
Oh
some
wait,
master
yeah.
claim.
We did some combo, performed 3 combo skills in combat. Yep, we definitely
Hell
did
yeah.
that. Cool. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and sign off of stream there. Thank you again, everyone, for coming and hanging out. I already let you know when I'm doing my next ones, and I'll talk to you later.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah.